Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca,
I'm Landon.
and we're doing another late night podcast, aren't we, Landon?
It seems to be a nightly occurrence.
It does. Oh my gosh. And I feel it's really interesting because we kind of yesterday were saying, oh, it's a slow week, things are slowing down. We can get some of our podcasts that we have in the queue out. I'm sure there's not going to be anything happening. And then suddenly, right?
Never fails. This Tim Ballard story just keeps giving.
It does. Yeah, we're getting close to Thanksgiving and this keeps giving. Let's say it that way. That's right. All right. So we are going to just sort of touch on some of the things that have happened in the last 24 hours, which are really interesting, as Landon said, having to do with the Tim Ballard. But we thought we would start out. Oh my gosh, so many people make so many comments saying, I can't keep all these people straight. Everybody has the same name. Everybody has the same initial. What is going on? So I thought, and I think it's smart, don't you, Landon? that we start out just with a little playbook, right? To explain who the major players are. So let's read through these. Do you want to read the first one, Landon?
Yeah, of course, we've got Russell M. Nelson.
That's right. We have Russell M. Nelson. And then what gets confusing, he, of course, is the president of the LDS Church, is that then we have a major player in the Tim Ballard situation who is the acting president of the 12 Apostles, and that is M. Russell Ballard. So right there, you have Russell M. and M. Russell. And you can see why we as podcasters and just people discussing it confuse that all the time. To make matters worse, who's our next player?
We have Tim Ballard.
We have Tim Ballard. So now we have the same last name. We have a Russell M. Russell. We have a Ballard. Okay. Now, who we're going to be talking about today is somebody, he's been there in the news. Other podcasters have covered him, but today a lot came out on him. So we're going to be focusing on him. And his name is what, Landon?
Russell Brunson.
Russell Brunson. Okay, so to recap, we have Russell M. Nelson, M. Russell Ballard, Russell Brunson, Tim Ballard. Is everyone tracking with us? Why don't you get a pencil, a paper, and let's write this down. Okay, maybe even whiteboard it. What about that?
Yeah. No more whiteboards. Like we've had enough of those.
No more whiteboards. Okay. And then I thought at this point, people might be getting confused. So I threw in Michael Ballon, not to be confused with any of the other Ballards. Michael Ballon, of course, was the famous, probably most well-known Satan in the Temple film, right? Do you remember him, Landon?
I do. That was my era. And of course, Michael Ballon has absolutely nothing to do with this show, other than they refer to Satan a lot. So we figured
that is true. I just didn't want people to get confused because there are so many similar names, and you've got the Balaam, Ballard. I just want to make sure that our viewers really have it straight. So then we started to notice some other parallels. Of course, some other people we're going to be talking about in this podcast. Glenn Lee Beck. I don't know if you realized that his middle name was Lee. Did you know that, Landon?
I had no idea.
Yeah. And then, of course, and I'm just starting to become a conspiracy theorist because Mike Lee, the senator, is also now starting to figure prominently in this story, as he's mentioned a little bit more. So we've got the Lee and the Lee connection, right?
We do.
We do.
And then we throw in General Sean Reyes. I didn't even know that the Attorney General was called General, but that's what they call him. So I'm used to Attorney General being called the AG, which is not to be confused with a GA, which is a general authority, which is what M. Russell Ballard is, a GA.
Okay.
Sean Reyes is an AG. Russell Nelson's a president. Mike Lee's a senator. Yeah, it's all over the place.
Okay. All right. I feel like we have made people feel even more confused.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't think this helped at all. Not one bit. So crumple up that paper, throw away your pencil, and let's just dive into what we're talking about. And hopefully everybody can track. So an interesting phenomenon yesterday in the afternoon, late afternoon, suddenly on KTVX, ABC4, an article appeared which was called ClickFunnels founder, who is Russell Brunson, claims that LDS church leader, Elder M. Russell Ballard, set up meeting with Tim Ballard. So this is the article on our local abc4.com. And the article was picked up by Yahoo. So you could find the article in two places yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, and this came out as a result. There was a couple days ago, there was a filing, an amendment to the lawsuit in which they claimed that Elder Ballard was using tithing, was giving tithing records to Tim Ballard in order to go get rich donors. Correct. And so as a result, ABC4 did a story on it and published that on abc4.com. And then that started getting picked up, and it got picked up by Yahoo News. So right. That was all, everyone was kind of reading it and going, oh, interesting. And then all of a sudden we had this happen.
And all of a sudden our local news, when you clicked on that link, ABC4 here in Utah, it was gone. On the left of the screen, it says, we're sorry, the page you're looking for can't be found. So all of us thought, well, now that is very interesting. What happened to the story? It was only up probably about 4 hours before it disappeared. But it was still on Yahoo. And it was still on Yahoo throughout the day today until a couple hours ago, where all of a sudden, because we kept checking this article, we knew we were going to be podcasting about it. All of a sudden, that link was dead too. And it says, the page you're looking for isn't here. Try searching this and that. So both articles were pulled from the news platforms.
Yeah. And at first we didn't want to be conspiracy theorists, and we're saying, why in the world would they have pulled this story? It's a good story. It covered things very well. Why is it all of a sudden disappeared? Now, we've experienced this before, so you were smart enough to start taking pictures and get the article downloaded and everything. Yes. So we do have a copy of the article, and we are going to go through that. But you're just all of a sudden going, what's going on here? Why would a news article suddenly just be pulled? Right. But that's exactly what happened. So we're going to go through. John DeLynn did an episode on this, and during it, you started chatting with one of the viewers. And he had actually called the KTVX newsroom. And I'll go ahead and read this because you probably can't.
Yeah. You know what? I could this time. And I will say that a lot of us had this idea. And I know that others sent emails and reached out to the different news venues saying, what has happened? But this particular person in the live chat of John DeLynn's episode that he did earlier today, which I encourage all you guys to check that out too, covering the same story, he actually had information real time. They had gotten back to him. So I asked him if I could use this on our podcast because I thought this was very interesting.
Yeah. So he says, I was also informed that the newsroom is meeting today to discuss what should be done. Apparently, the church had concerns that the article was biased, LOL, so they are meeting to see how to best cover it.
Right. And this is the KUTV. This is the local news
KTVX,
that he reached out.
KTVX.
Sorry, KTVX. There's so many different news channels. KTVX. This is the ABC that he reached out to, the local news.
Yes. Then he says, yes, I called the ABC4 newsroom and spoke with an employee that said that upper management requested to take the article down and that they are meeting today to discuss it. Then he says, the woman I spoke with seemed concerned and a little embarrassed that the article was taken down.
I can imagine. You're a news outlet. You're supposed to carry the news and not be influenced by anyone.
Yes, the church calls up and says, we don't think this is a fair article. And so they pull the article. Now, if they put something up that I don't agree with and I call and say, I don't agree with this, the newsroom doesn't take down the article.
Well, you don't have that kind of
call. You take down the article. Then he says, I thought that it was either the church requesting the article to be removed or Russell Bronson, ClickFunnels. He's the president of or CEO of ClickFunnels.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was both. So, of course, that's an opinion there, but he was told by the employee that he talked to at ABC4 that they took it down because the church had concerns about the article and thought that it was too biased and asked for it to be taken down. So we're going to go through today and we're going to look at that article. We're going to see what it said, and we're going to see what in that article was so biased, what in that article would give the church concerns, and why in the world would ABC take down the article, as well as have Yahoo take it down as well.
Yeah. And a lot of people made the comment to me as we talked about this phenomenon. Wow, that's a lot of power to get ABC and to get Yahoo to take something down. That's a lot of power. A lot of people were using words like scary. So.
Oh, it absolutely is, because when you look at the church has all of this power because they're almost untouchable because they're a church, and the First Amendment, freedom of religion, says that that it gives religion a lot of latitude. But the First Amendment also gives press a lot of latitude, free speech and freedom of the press. Press's job is to obviously do checks on government, do checks on religion. It's to keep people in line by checking the facts and putting out and reporting when something's not kosher. So a lot of this starts out, it goes back to the Vice article, September 15th, that came out. And the church made a statement at that time regarding Tim Ballard and Apostle Russell, we spelled it wrong there, Russell Ballard's affiliation. There we
Did
go.
we really say Russell M. Ballard? Oh my gosh, we reversed the M and the R.
Russell Ballard, yes.
In my defense, I made this right when it came out, like back September 15th. So I didn't have access to our wonderful whiteboard, that we just showed. So yes, this should be M. Russell Ballard. Absolutely. But this is the statement that kicked everything off. Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and read this, and we're going to come back to this because this is important. But this is the statement that came out when Vice magazine said we're going to report on this Tim Ballard issue. Remember, Tim Ballard was going to announce his candidacy as to run for the U.S. Senate from the state of Utah, and the church puts out this statement, and it gets published, and it's been published in just about every. I know it's been published in every local newspaper. Many national presses have run this, and the article says President Ballard and Tim Ballard, no relation, established a friendship a number of years ago. That friendship was built on a shared interest in looking after God's children wherever they are and without regard to their circumstance. However, that relationship is in the past. For many months, President Ballard has had no contact with the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, OUR. The nature of that relationship was always in support of vulnerable children being abused, trafficked, and otherwise neglected. Once it became clear Tim Ballard had betrayed their friendship through the unauthorized use of President Ballard's name for Tim Ballard's personal advantage and activity regarded as morally unacceptable, President Ballard withdrew his association. President Ballard never authorized his name or the name of the church to be used for Tim's personal or financial interests. In addition, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with them. President Ballard loves children all over the world. It has been his mission and life's work to look after them, care for them, and point them to their Savior. So this is the article that came out in Vice magazine. And immediately we started hearing a bunch of people inside a lot of people who are very close to Tim Ballard started saying, this is a fake statement. Why would the church give a statement to Vice News? That's the last people you would expect them to be giving a statement. This is a rogue element within the church putting out this statement. And for about 2 days, it seemed like there was calls going back and forth, questions being raised as to whether this was actually from the church. And many of the local news sources reached out to the church newsroom and asked them, did you put this out? And the church confirmed it. We even got the name of the church spokesman, Anderson was his name, who was the one that released the article, and that it was released with the church's full authority.
But I think because it didn't appear in the church newsroom, that's what people look for. And so the different boards that I went on and things that I read, until they see that on the church newsroom, there's still a level of mistrust, even though, as you said, it was in every single platform that could be in. Deseret News, even everybody confirmed it, but there are still some that don't believe it.
Yep, absolutely. And we're going to cover that and some of the people who didn't believe it, and then kind of hopefully show why this is so ridiculous that Channel 4 would pull this article under pressure from the church. This is the article right here. It's by Heather Smith. It was put out November 7th at 5:50 p.m. Mountain Time. It's called ClickFunnels Founder Claims LDS Church Elder Set Up Meeting with Tim Ballard. So ClickFunnels founder is Russell Brunson. He's a young guy from Eagle, Idaho, and he actually put out a video where he said he met with Elder Ballard, and that he met in meetings with both Elder Ballard and with Tim Ballard. One thing that they did put on when they released it is under the picture, they had this little blurb that said, "This is a developing story. ABC4.com will update this post as more information becomes available." So
yeah, I thought that was really interesting because typically you will see that on a story, but that doesn't mean they're also saying, and we will take the story down until we're able to update it and put it up again. No, if anything, they will add information or sometimes a retraction or a correction at the bottom. You'll see that it says, "Oh, we got this name wrong," or this. You see articles in real time changing. I've never seen an article being completely pulled. That's something that you just don't see very often.
And it would make sense that you would pull it if it wasn't true, if you found some facts that said it wasn't true, or that you found something that was in error in the article, you might pull it until you could fix it. But like you say, generally you would make a correction on this. But that's the only reason I can think of. I can't think of stories where they've literally just pulled the story right out of thin air once it's been posted and start pulling it off of every media. What in the world got them in so much trouble that they had to pull an article that they'd already released, that people had already read, people were already talking about, and you just completely pull the article with no explanation?
That's right. And luckily people had already downloaded it and copied it. That's the thing. Otherwise it would be gone forever. And it's very interesting. Are we going to read through the article? I think this will be great.
Yeah, we are going to read through the article.
Perfect.
And
I think this will help explain to people this video that we're talking about, because the video that Russell Brunson put out was the very next day after that statement from the church in the Vice magazine. So he puts this out. The catalyst was the Vice article statement from the church, although people questioned whether it was from the church. And then we have people coming to Tim Ballard's defense, and Russell Brunson is one of them.
Yeah. So do you want to read this? We've got to switch back and forth between video and slides, so hopefully that goes smooth.
We'll see
with that and see, but it's important because what we're going to do is we're going to fact check this article that ABC4 put out. That's what we're going to do.
Exactly, because like Landon said, it would have to be something, I think, pretty radical, like a pretty radical lie for an article to actually be pulled off of a news venue. It would have to be, I would think, a verifiable lie, right? Some information would have come forward showing the news team that there's huge amount of misinformation in the article. So we're going to look at this and see if that's true. Where and what is this misinformation? So it starts out by saying Salt Lake City, ABC4, the co-founder of Eagle, Idaho digital marketing firm claimed in a social media video in September that a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints general authority introduced him to former Operation Underground Railroad founder Tim Ballard for the purpose of discussing ways to help OUR, which is Operation Underground Railroad. A claim that raises questions about the church's statement of having never endorsed or supported OUR or any projects associated with Tim Ballard. ClickFunnels head Russell Brunson took to social media on September 16th, and this is the video that they're talking about, in defense of Tim Ballard, but also claimed that M. Russell Ballard, current acting president of the church's Quorum of the 12 Apostles, introduced him, Russell Brunson, to Tim Ballard. No relation. And it says the full video is posted to Facebook and Instagram. And this is true. We checked it just, I think, an hour ago, and it is still there, which is actually, to me, a very important piece of this puzzle. This video has been up and uninterrupted for almost 2 months. It's still there on Russell Brunson's site. It features Brunson addressing his followers, his friends, and those who have been donating to OUR with me about his thoughts on the recent negative media about Tim Ballard. And by that, they're talking about the church's statement. The video is a direct response, as we said before, to the church's statement.
Yes, and it's interesting. The only thing they say, everything they report here is true. Russell Brunson is the head of that. He did say that he was introduced to the founder, Tim, and all that the article states here is that if that is in fact true, if what he claims happened, it raises questions about the church's statement of never having endorsed or supported. So they're saying if M. Russell Ballard introduced Russell Brunson to Tim Ballard, then in his role as an apostle in the church office building, that would certainly indicate support from the church for this organization. So the question is this true? Did he put a video out in which he made that claim? And when we read through this, you'll see quotes in there. The people been donating to OUR with me. Those are direct quotes from the video.
Right.
So we're going to.
So the only conjecture in these first two paragraphs is it says it raises questions about this claim. It doesn't even make a statement like the claim is false or they're lying. It just says, here's a question. This is interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to fact check this. This is the video.
Hey, my name is Russell Brunson, for those who don't know me, and I make this video to talk about Tim Ballard. A lot of you guys know that he's someone who we have been supporting for the last few years. Some of you guys probably saw the new movie, Sound of Freedom, so you know a little about the story. This weekend there was a bunch of new press coming out about Tim Ballard, people attacking him, his character, and just a whole bunch of stuff. And I've got a lot of you guys who are my friends, people who have been donating with me at OUR, wanting to know my opinion, what's happening, and so I wanted to make an official video to let you guys know my thoughts.
Okay, so this is Russell Brunson. He's young, but he's a multimillionaire. He started this organization. And as you heard there, he just said exactly what those quotes were from the article. So there can be no doubt here that that the article is completely fact checkable. We can completely fact check this. He said, for those who've been donating to OUR with me about recent negative media about Tim Ballard, those are the exact words he said. He did make a video and he is supporting it. And it's important to note, this is a friend of Tim Ballard, somebody who thinks that he's going on here to help the situation because he thinks this is a false statement. And he's going to go on and tell us that, about his, how he became a donor with his meeting with M. Russell Ballard, Elder Ballard. And so every single part of this is verifiable. There's not a single thing in here that is false. There's not a single thing in here that's biased. It's all absolutely provable and watchable. And there's no reason that, that this would lead to anything.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should fact check the next paragraph in the article, shouldn't we?
Absolutely.
So it goes on and says, Brunson's video was made in response to reports of a September 15th statement from the LDS Church. And that's the statement in Vice magazine that we have also posted right there, denouncing Tim Ballard, claiming the former OUR founder betrayed a friendship with M. Russell Ballard. The church called Tim Ballard's activity morally unacceptable. In the church's statement, it claimed the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with them. Okay.
Again, absolutely everything in here is verifiable. That's exactly what the press statement to Vice magazine said, that that Tim Ballard had betrayed the friendship of M. Russell Ballard. They said that he's morally unacceptable. And they said that the church has never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR. I've highlighted it right there in the statement that's released. So once again, there is absolutely nothing here false. There's nothing here making any claims. I don't see how it's a bias that you're including the church's statement on this issue.
Their own words, right?
their very own words. So far,
no, everything is completely truthful. There's nothing, almost word for word truthful. They're not even really paraphrasing in a lot of it. They're actually taking their own words. You're right. So what happens in the next paragraph from the article? Following the release of the church's statement in September, Tim Ballard and many of his supporters claimed it was fake, meaning they did not believe this statement came from the church because it was released in Vice magazine, which is atypical of the church. They usually will put a statement out on the church newsroom. They will put a church announcement out in Deseret News or some other source. So, and the church, of course, did not verify it in any way until later. And so everybody right away thought this has to be a fake. So even with supporting documents and emails from numerous media outlets showing that the statement had indeed been sent from church media representatives, there were several people, several notable people, and a lot of other people who just thought, okay, there's no way. This is not the church. And one of those people, Landon, was whom?
Glenn Beck. Yep.
That's right.
And we have some of the, is this Twitter or different places where he sent out, and he basically said, we know this is a fake because my church would never do this. My church would never excommunicate a member without giving them adequate notice or opportunity. They would not effectively excommunicate church members by means of public statements issued to news media by unnamed church spokesperson.
Yeah.
They wouldn't effectively excommunicate church members through ambiguous but unquestionably damning statements or provide to publications that hate the church, its members, and everything they stand for. So
he's pretty adamant. And you made a timeline of when this came out after the statement. I think this is kind of important very quickly to go over because the statement comes out and Glenn Beck right away, leaps to the fence and says, this is not my church. They don't do this. And so that was around what time?
So the article came out on Friday, September 15th. Saturday, September 16th, the lawsuit included an email from Glenn Beck where he emails Tim Ballard, and he says, hey, I've talked to Elder Anderson, one of the 12 apostles. I've talked to Mike Lee. I've talked to Sean Reyes. Mike Lee's got all the political cover. Sean Reyes has got the stuff in order that he needs. Elder Anderson was out of the country. He didn't know anything about it, but he was making some calls and he's going to get back to us. He said, but you need to be very careful. And he basically says, there are people inside the church working against us. They basically are on the devil's side and they're trying to tear you down. You need to be very careful on what you say and what you do with the media. But it's to him, it was clear that this was an inside hack job.
Yep.
It wasn't put out by the church media, and he's trying to get to the bottom of it.
Right. And I think his statements right there that you just read, that corresponds with that email. And the email, of course, came out in the amended claim. So we can see that Glenn Beck is, he's saying it's not my church. He's talking to Tim. It's not the church. We're going to get to the bottom of it. He's absolutely believing Tim at this point and thinking that whatever statement that is, it's not from the church. Then we feel like in a short period of time, just a few hours.
Yeah, that was at 6:30 p.m.
Yeah, 6:30 p.m.
September 16th on that Saturday that he sent that letter to Tim Ballard. And at midnight, that's when he sent out this tweet saying, this isn't my church. This is rogue elements. My church doesn't do this. My church doesn't behave that way. So that's at midnight. By 8 o'clock the next morning, he's completely flipped and saying, oh, we need to, he took down his previous tweet and he started putting up things saying, well, we need to let the Lord's representatives handle this and do what they need to, which tells us that at some point during the night, he got word back either from Elder Anderson or somebody else within the church infrastructure called him, confirmed to him that this was the church that did this. And by the fact that he backed off so much, they must have told him something. They must have told him.
Must have been pretty conclusive, I would think. And then you have to look at his actions at that point. It did not seem like he believed Tim Ballard anymore. Then he starts saying, okay, I'm digging into it. I have my own reporters looking. I've read some statements from the women. And eventually that big article came out that said, I was duped. So he very quickly walked it back. Now, Russell Brunson did not ever do anything like that. He put out his video about the same time, that these, the first Instagram post, I think that's Instagram or Twitter, I don't know, came out, but he never walked anything back. That video is still on his Facebook page. So that kind of says to me, I think he's probably still in Tim's camp. Is that kind of what it says to you? I mean, I'm just speculating, of course, but he never did anything.
But that's what I would believe. But we need to keep in mind that the article doesn't say anything about that. All it says is there were supporters who claimed it was fake. And we know from the video that we just saw from Russell Brunson, and we know from the tweets or the Instagram posts or whatever these are that Glenn Beck put out, that he also believed that they were fake. Right. So exactly what the article says is absolutely true. There's not anything in here that's biased. There's not anything in here that's biased to the church. It's just simply saying people made this claim, and that's why he put out this video. Was he put out this video in order to address that.
Yep, that's absolutely true. So far, we're, what would you say? Four. We're absolutely leaning on the side of truth, right? There's absolutely 100% nothing.
Fact check. There's nothing
100%.
That is not
That's
true.
Right. Okay, so the article goes on and says Brunson vehemently claimed in his video that the LDS statement was fake, kind of like what we saw Glenn Beck saying, and had been obtained, in his opinion, from rogue employees of the church. So they're thinking that somebody made this statement, not the church, but somebody came out using the church's name. Brunson has made no further statement on social media about the Tim Ballard situation, and he has not responded to requests for comment from abc4.com prior to this piece being published. So they ask him, it sounds like, would you like to say anything? Your video's still up. Do you have any kind of comment? And it sounds like absolutely no comment at this point. So it goes on to say Brunson claimed that he knew the statement was fake. And again, we're talking about the church statement and advice, because he had been in the room with both Ballards, meaning M. Russell Ballard and also Tim Ballard. Brunson claimed he was making this video as somebody who doesn't just have third-hand knowledge or who read an article about an article about an article, but as someone who has been involved with it, with him and the group for a long, long time. So an insider, right? Isn't that what that says to you? An absolute insider.
And this is in quotes, so these are his words from the video.
Yep, from the video. Yep. It's interesting, and this is in quotes again. It's interesting because the way talking about Russell Brunson, found out about Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad was actually from Elder Ballard, Brunson said. He personally called me and asked me to help Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. I have literally sat in the room with Elder Ballard and Tim Ballard as we discussed these things and these ideas. So how does this stand up to our fact check meter?
Well, we'll check that in just a second. It's obvious here, though, that if what he is saying right here, that Elder Ballard called him and asked him to help Tim Ballard in Operation Underground Railroad, that the church certainly is sponsoring him and is helping him. When you get called by an apostle in his official capacity and he asks you to help, and we see in the video where he even tells him that if you decide to help, Satan is going to come after you and try to destroy this work. This undermines the church's statement. And is that why the church thinks it's biased? A biased article? Maybe so. But the fact is, that's what he said. And we can check that again with our video. We can check and see if that is in fact what.
And making this video somebody who doesn't just have like third-hand knowledge or read an article about an article, someone who I've been involved with it, with him and with the group for a long, long time. So the most recent article that came out was basically saying that the Mormon Church was against Tim Ballard and this whole huge thing, and it's this big scandal. And it's interesting because the way that I found out about Tim Ballard and about Operation Underground Railroad was actually from Elder Ballard. He personally called me and asked me to help Tim Ballard in Operation Underground Railroad. I have lived.
Okay.
There it is.
I think he said it.
He said it. So from his point of view, that's exactly what happened. And I will say that I have come across posts on social media from other people who say, and again, all of this is alleged, but they have said, I am friends with Russell Brunson. He told me that he was contacted by the church. He told me that he was encouraged to become involved. So other people know this story. And of course they would. I mean, how exciting, right? For Russell Brunson. Oh my gosh, an apostle talked to me. He wants me to help with this. I'm going to be a producer or, finance this movie. Of course, he's going to tell people about this and be very excited. And so some of those people are coming forward on social media and saying, I can at least anecdotally say that Russell did tell me that I was contacted by an apostle to get involved with this group. And one person even said that Russell did not know anything about Tim or OUR, didn't really even know who they were prior to this call, or didn't know much about him. So there seems to be a lot of people sort of corroborating this.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
So we're going to finish up the article. This is the whole article.
It's very short.
That was pulled. So you want to take us home on this one here?
Yeah, let's read it again, because so far, I'm telling you, everything we've read seems to be fairly accurately representing what that video said. So let's keep reading. ABC4 has also asked the church to clarify its statement, saying it never endorsed or supported OUR or any projects associated with Tim Ballard, considering Brunson claimed the meeting was specifically for that purpose. So there they are, kind of raising the question. Again, they're just asking the church. Now, you said that there wasn't any kind of support or endorsement, and yet we have a video from, a wealthy individual who says something different. He says that he was called to the church office building, that an admin called him. He went to the building. He met with an apostle. So, of course, you would check your facts. Now, we'd like the church to weigh in. It says we are waiting to hear back. So far, they haven't gotten an answer from the church on that. He furthermore claimed, and that's, again, Russell Brunson, Tim Ballard, is being attacked from the outside. This is not the truth. Again, this is coming from someone who literally, I've been in the room with him and Elder Ballard talking about these things, okay? I've been in the rooms. Elder Ballard is the one that introduced me. Tim never came to me and they told me some big story and tried to get me in. It was the opposite way around. Fully, you need to understand. This is the way it actually worked. This is the actual truth. And they're talking about Elder Ballard coming to Russell Brunson and asking for support. Not some rogue employee who got fired because they were bad at their jobs, lying between their teeth. That's literally what the sources are. If you look at where they are getting this stuff, it's ridiculous. Brunson closed his video by reaffirming his support for Tim Ballard and the work of OUR. And that's the end of the article. It's very short.
Yep. And we're going to fact check this last part. It's a little bit longer. I want to say I'm going to skip part of the video because for time, and go to the end where this part, because we're just fact checking what was in the article. But it's very interesting. I encourage everyone to go watch the entire thing, because in between the part that I'm going to skip, he pulls out a book that's on marketing and lying in marketing. And what does he talk about? He talks about this teaches you how to lie and manipulate people. And that's what podcasters are doing. It used to be that the mainstream press would be who we would go to for reliable news. And now anybody can come up and lie to you. And I was just going, are you kidding me? It's the podcasters who are having to put this information out, because what we're seeing is the mainstream media won't address it. And this is a perfect example of the mainstream media not addressing it. They cave to the church. They go and they say, we're going to hide the story because the church asked us to, when every one of their facts is 100% verifiable and everything they said in here is absolutely true. So
that's true. And again, the part that he's talking about, it is a book. It's a book on media. And his claim, of course, is that perhaps somebody, I think he alludes to the cartel, somebody that's after OUR could simply hire a PR firm and have this kind of thing happen, right? Leak a story at a low level and then have it enter the mainstream. It's sort of a textbook tactic and strategy that most of us probably aren't aware of and may fall for all the time, things like that we're not really aware of. So he's kind of saying we as the public are falling for this. Somebody is out to get Tim. Somebody is trying to smear him. Kind of like we need to wake up. That's sort of how I took that middle part.
Oh, yeah. He keeps saying, you've been duped. You've all been duped. I'm the one who knows. I know how this works. I read this book. You're being duped. You're being played. He even says that. Right. You're being played.
Well, it is his industry. That's the thing. He is Mr. Media. This is what he does. And so I can understand why he would see it that way, especially if you, in your mind, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around having to admit that maybe somebody you support and really admire is not who you thought. So I do understand that.
And I've got to get it here to the right place and try to get this started.
All right.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's a really interesting video, and it's still on his Facebook page.
You need to be aware of.
I'm going to move it a little closer to where he says what was in the article here.
Okay.
Especially if you like someone who loves OUR, loves Tim Ballard, loves the mission, and like you saw Sound of Freedom, like I want to be part of this, and you're seeing these other things. Just be fully aware he's being attacked from the outside. This is not the truth. Okay, it is not the truth. Again, and this is coming from someone who literally, I've been in the rooms with him and Elder Ballard talking about these things. Okay, I've been in the rooms. Elder Ballard is one who introduced me. Tim never came to me and like told me some big story about Elder Ballard and like tried to get me in. It was the opposite way around. Okay, so fully you need to understand like, this is the way it's actually working. This is the actual truth, not some rogue employee who got fired because they were bad at their job, lying between the teeth. Like what literally the sources are if you look at where they're getting this stuff. Like it's ridiculous. Like I understand the reality of it. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it as well because you're being played. And it's important if you guys understand that, because if you understand that, then you can stand on the side of the person who's literally out there in the front of all this, taking all these arrows for you and for me so that we don't have to. And instead of us turning our back and like, oh, shoot some arrows too, like, oh, good, like I want to distance myself. Like it's not true. These are lies. And the more you understand that, the more you understand the man and the character that Tim Ballard is, the more important it is. So I want to make this video for him and for you so you understand the truth, because this is the playbook they're using. It works good, but it's not true. So there you go. Hope that helps. Tim, we love you. Tim, we support you. Tim, I'm here for you. And for everybody else, I want to encourage you, instead of just believing what you see on the news, look behind the man, look behind the truth, look behind the works they're doing. By their fruits you shall know them. And there's no better man on this earth right now than Tim Ballard. So there you go. Appreciate you all. Thanks for listening.
Wow, there it is. He did encourage us to look at things, right? Yes. And that's exactly what we're doing right here. And I will say that on his Facebook page, I checked there today to make sure the video was still up. And there are quite a few supportive comments there of Tim and of Russell and his support of Tim. So comment after comment after comment about, we believe you, Tim. So it's kind of interesting.
And so everything he said right here, you heard him say those exact words. It's not some rogue, it's a rogue employee, not someone who's, got fired because they're bad at their job. All of that was word for word what he said. And then he closed his video by reaffirming his support for Tim Ballard. I don't think anyone could argue that this article is 100% true, 100% fact checked, 100% accurate. And yet they say that they feel that it's biased because the church thinks it's biased. I think they misunderstand what the word bias means. I don't understand why they would pull this video just because the church doesn't like it. It's not bias. It's incriminating. That's what they mean. It's incriminating. Yep. You have somebody who was asked, a rich person, just like the reports are coming out, who said, I was asked by M. Russell Nelson to support Ballard. This organization, or M. Russell Ballard.
I know, no one can do it. I'm telling you.
With Tim Ballard. We've explained at the beginning why it's so hard to keep these names straight.
It is, and I've heard bigger podcasters than we are make these mistakes. It is really hard to get through this. So yeah, just because you don't like what's being said, you cannot say that it's biased if it's the truth, at least as one person is stating it. So of course, this is all what Russell Brunson himself is saying, but the article absolutely accurately portrays what he said. So I don't see any bias at all. And I also don't even see them really making any statements or even conjecture. They're basically asking some questions. We tried to reach out and ask this, and we tried to say this, and we're waiting for a response. They're not even really weighing in with a big, long opinion piece like we are right now, right?
Right.
They're not doing
conjecturing or anything.
No,
they're saying
they're not.
What he says is the opposite of what the church said in their statement. Right. So we're trying to get a clarification on it.
Yep.
And here's why it isn't at odds with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot understand why it was pulled. I mean, I've read articles where I thought, wow, you're really kind of pushing the line. You know, you've read articles like that too, where they really take a leap. This was textbook down the line reporting of things that were actually happening and then raising a few questions. You said one thing, you said another. Let's try to clarify this. And yet the article's gone.
I take off my hat to ABC4 for actually covering this. This is the only news outlet that I've seen that's covered this. And the sad part, though, is we've known this information for a month. We've been talking about this for a month.
Yeah.
Lynn Packard has been talking about this for months and months and months, telling the church that this was happening, and no one listened to him. The news outlets are late to this, but at least KTVX took it on. None of the other news outlets have. And this is a big story. The fact that national news outlets picked it up, and you would pull the story that's a local story that got picked up by the national news outlets, you would pull that story, and instead they're covering the CMA awards are being conducted. Really?
No, that doesn't happen. If your story is pulled, that's amazing, right? Because then your news organization, smaller, gets this recognition. So you don't pull that story unless there's some other forces at play there. And like Landon said, we saw this video when it first came out. Other podcasters played it. John DeLynn played it very early. I think RFM played it, but it was just part of a larger story. And we were kind of behind the scenes saying, this is kind of big. This seems to really speak to involvement. So we were glad to see it getting more play. We were proud of ABC4 and now just extremely confused as far as what must have happened behind the scenes.
And my hat off to the reporter. It was a very accurate, very non-biased, very even reporting. It's the management at KTVX, which I've got to imagine some of those people are LDS. And just because you don't like the news doesn't mean you pull the news because it conflicts with your worldview. But that seems to be what's happening here. If the statement from the newsroom to our viewer is accurate, that they felt like it was biased, because there's not a single bias thing. There's not a single thing there that cannot be fact checked. Now let's look at the LDS church statement that went out to Vice magazine. This was put in Vice magazine, and then it was carried by all the major news outlets reported on this. I think we've all seen it on the news channels, in the newspapers. This can also be fact checked. And let's fact check this. This didn't get pulled. This didn't get concerned. Nobody said this seems a little biased against Tim Ballard when they say that he's morally unacceptable. The church is making a claim that he's morally unacceptable. But how do we fact check that? How do we know that they're not covering? No questions were asked when the church put out a statement. So let's look at this a little bit and see what some of the things are that we've learned about the church. One, Lynn Packard has gone has put this in some of the reporting that he's done. And in addition to Russell Brunson's video that we just heard and his claims, there was another man named Mark Jensen who also made a claim.
That's right. And when we mention claim, we're talking about a claim that he was approached and, pitched by Elder Ballard. This is another sort of corroborating claim that Elder Ballard talked to him and asked him to become involved.
And the news outlets could have gone and researched this and found out, just like we did. This slide actually comes from a report we did about a month ago.
Yeah, I thought it looked familiar.
Yeah, it came from our whiteboard.
Are you saying we're
episode.
recycling now?
We're recycling.
It is. It's from our episode on the whiteboard where we really dug into that. That was a good one. So yeah, this is very interesting.
Packard put this out months ago, and all of the post-Mormon world has been showing these things. Yet the local news media doesn't seem to know anything about this, or doesn't bother to research this and find out if this is biased. So a couple things in this. In a later interview with Mark Jensen, the project leader of the church's Kirtland, Ohio project, Jensen claimed that at the request of President Ballard, he attended several meetings with him and brought other prominent church donors to these meetings as well. So this man, it was called by the church to run, to collect funds, do fundraising to restore buildings in Kirtland, Ohio. And so his job was to get with all these donors, and why, when the church has $1 billion, they need more donors.
Never understood that.
That seems to be the thing. So to quote a few of the slides, Jensen claims that during the meeting, Elder Ballard would suggest that donors also consider investing with his son, Craig Ballard, and son-in-law, Brad Brower. So he's not only is he saying, hey, he meets with these donors, and then he says, hey, you need to invest with my son-in-law and my sons, while in addition to Kirtland and donating to that. He said subsequent meetings were set up at their offices in Farmington next to a facility where powders and drinks are formulated for various multi-level marketing ventures. So his follow-on meetings were with Ballard's sons at their place of business. One of several Kirtland donors who Jensen says invested in the Ballard family enterprise was Mormon billionaire Gene Yamagata, handled by Yamagata's CFO, David Sr. Jensen claims Ballard fired him from his calling after Jensen and at least one of the Kirtland donors expressed concern about the propriety of linking church donations to investments with Ballard's family.
Now that is very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So Mark Jensen, and sounds like somebody else said, this is getting weird. Like, we're fine donating to the Kirtland Project. We're all on board with that. We want to do that restoration. But why do we also have to give money to President Ballard's son and son-in-law? I can see why they would raise that concern.
Absolutely. And then he gets fired when he raises the concern.
And then you're out.
So Jensen says after his termination, he was re-engaged, but under the direction of two other apostles, Henry Eyring and Jeffrey Holland. So they bring him back in to continue, working. You'll work with us, not with Ballard. They evidently pulled him from working with Ballard. Jensen says the fundraising continued. It shows that Russell Ballard's alleged secret investment in OUR through a business entity controlled by his son or son-in-law is plausible. So he's saying it's very possible that because OUR is tied to his sons and son-in-laws, it's very plausible story, and we'll show where that's true. The video goes further into corroborating evidence for the possibility that Russell Ballard has used his office, both his authority and physical church office space, to promote OUR, in addition to Tim Ballard's admission that he is providing financial support. So a second person who's saying, Ballard called me in. He was asking for me to donate. He was asking me to donate to his son's businesses. His sons are tied into his sons are tied in with OUR and with this Liberty 89. Is that what it's called?
89, yeah.
They're actually the lead on that, which was one of the groups that was helping Tim Ballard with fundraising and for-profits.
Right. And I have to add, in talking about this to somebody who's more on the faithful side of Mormonism, they said, well, I think it's probably just Elder Ballard just conducting business. They're allowed to do their own thing and have their own interests, which I don't really think that's true. They do seem to be pretty locked down in that. And I also have to say that if you are called by an admin in the church office building, invited to an apostle's office, go into the church office building, go into their office, I feel like, the whole weight of the church is behind that. There's no way that in your mind, you're going to separate it out and think, well, this is probably just him It almost is like, and I think RFM brought this up today, the speaking as a man, investing as a man, not as a man. I mean, how can you distinguish that? Obviously, anybody you bring in is going to think the church is behind this. You're not going to see a difference.
And these people were called because they were identified as faithful church members who had a big pocketbook.
Yeah.
Which goes to support the argument that he's looking at tithing records. Now, whether he gave those tithing records directly to Tim Ballard or whether he went through them, put down the names of the big donors he thought would work, and then started making phone calls and started fundraising for Tim, it doesn't really matter. If he was calling these rich people and asking them to donate to Tim Ballard, then that's church support. He was doing this in the church office building using church resources.
Yes.
At the time that these people were making a call. So
and again, that claim comes from the amended claim that just came out last week. That's the first time we heard about that, and that has been all over the news. That Elder Ballard was somehow accessing information about wealthy donors through tithing information. So that's what everybody's talking about. And that's what that picture was. That is he calling? We don't know. Is he doing it himself? Is he handing over records to Tim? Nobody knows. But it seems like somehow these wealthy donors are targeted. Those are the ones that are brought into the office. It's not you and me, right? We're not getting that call. We're not getting invited.
Yes. Thank goodness I'm not getting that.
Thank goodness. Oh, I have been in that church office building before. You know that story.
Yes, I do. I do.
It was not to make a donation.
So this next slide here is a picture of M. Russell Ballard's son-in-law and daughter. They run a business. They have an investment company called TBB Investments. They also have a business that makes powdered drinks and different things like that in Farmington. And you can see here that, and this is kind of small, I know, but this was on our whiteboard episode. If you want to go see that, it's bigger. But this is the Certificate of Organization for Slave Stealers, LLC. And in there, he lists the location for where they're doing business. And it's an address in Farmington, Utah, which I've hidden for, just for the
privacy
reasons that we don't want everyone to go drive to that place. But in that same location is TBB Investments. They have the same address, and that's where they conduct business. That address is the same address as his TBB Investments, which he and his wife own, as well as the company that he owns. And this,
right. And I will say that Slave Stealers is Tim Ballard's for-profit arm of OUR. So I think the point here is that you've got Tim Ballard's for-profit organization in the very same location as Elder Ballard's son-in-law and daughter's business, like right there. So if that doesn't say involvement on some level, I don't know what does. They're both in the same location.
And again, this is absolutely verifiable by the media. They can check this and fact check the church. So it appears that the church feels it's biased, that they're being fact checked, and that people are saying, wait a minute, your claim, it doesn't make sense. Look at this. Right. Look at this. It's not making sense. And, we're being persecuted because you're asking us questions that the evidence is clearly supportive of.
Right. So our fact-checking meter is kind of going the other way on the church's statement, because we have a lot of things here that show there is involvement. There was prior involvement. There's solicitation of donations. There's resources, like you can have your business headquarters here where, I have some interests here too. So it seems like there's a lot of involvement. So our fact-check meter kind of going the other way on the church's statement. Yes.
Yeah, and all of these fundraisings seem to be coordinated through the church office building and Elder Ballard's office. So, again,
and I'll say for our listeners, go back one. You can tell that I love AI. Whenever we're going to do a presentation, I'm like, what can I make on AI? It's just so fun. So we have a door in the church office building with a plaque that says "Secret Apostolic Fundraising Meeting in Progress." I'm sure they have a sign like that. I'm sure that's real.
I would imagine, but of course we're not allowed in there. So
no, we're not going to be there. So what else do we have that shows that the church is seeming to support and be on the same page as OUR.
Yeah. Remember from their statement, they say the church in no way supports OUR, even though they've had BYU football team. Tim Ballard went and talked to the BYU football team. There was a BYU Idaho, what do you call it?
Devotional, I think, a devotional. Yeah.
Where they talked about how Tim Ballard knew so much about Nephi, and they introduced Tim Ballard. His books are sold through Deseret Book, which is a church-owned publication. There were articles in LDS Living that we found, all talking about him. Dozens and dozens of articles that the church has done promoting OUR and talking about OUR and how impressive it was and how impressive Tim Ballard is. They absolutely were endorsing him. Anyone can fact check that. And even this program from the Second Ward of New Braunfels, October 15, 2023.
Recent.
The First Ward has extended an invitation to all adults and youth 14 plus to attend a devotional tomorrow. So not only is the Second Ward, but the First Ward is also involved with this. So there's 2 wards going to a devotional. What is the devotional? It's Matt Osborne, OUR president, will address topics including internet safety, grooming tactics, extortion schemes, situational awareness, conversation openers. Please see the attached flyer for additional information. So he's going to talk about grooming tactics. He was on these operations with Tim Ballard where these women were groomed. And now he's going to go talk to the church members and tell them how to not be groomed. And this is after all of this information is broke.
Yeah.
This is 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks now, I guess.
This is literally a month after the church put out the article or the statement in the Vice article saying, we never had anything to do with them. We don't support them. We've severed our friendship. Here's a fireside. And I would think that a fireside has to have some kind of okay from the top, right? I would think that the bishop would have to check with the stake president. You know, it might be up the chain a little bit that somebody couldn't just walk in and do this. So to me, this was very telling. And I would love it if our viewers and listeners, if you know of any other firesides that are happening, I'd like to see if this is just a regular occurrence. And the problem with fact checking, though, all the things we just talked about, is that most of these things have since been pulled. All of the books from Deseret Book, that BYU Idaho devotional that Elder Ballard gave, or he was just, raving, couldn't get enough about Tim and Tim and Nephi. That was up for a while on the church's website. That has since been pulled. That is not there anymore. The articles that you used to be able to search on the website of the church, those have also been pulled. Now, of course, all of us have saved all of those. We still have access, but one by one, everything has been disappearing, some very quickly. So there is no evidence. They're trying not to leave a trail so that, social media kind of matches what they're saying in their statement. But we know that wasn't true at the beginning.
And everyone knows that, they're going to go to this fireside and they're not going to solicit donations at the fireside. Right. But everybody at the end of that's going to go, oh, what a great organization. They're saving children. And they're going to go and make donations to the organization. You invited them into your church meeting. You conducted a fireside, a devotional, and had them come speak specifically for them to get donations. That's what the end result of this is going to be. That is a complete contradiction to what the church said in their statement. So once again, we completely debunked the church's statement. We can completely verify the article by ABC4. And I would challenge any program out there, a faithful program or anyone else, to go and debunk that article, because we just showed you that every word they said in it came from the mouth of Russell Brunson, just as they said. They didn't,
and I would say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
They didn't try to say, oh, he's guilty of this. They were just saying his claims contradict what the church said. And this is, we're trying to find out.
I was going to make one more point about that program. It really tells me that the church trusts OUR, because it's even inviting its younger, vulnerable members, 14-year-olds. As young as 14 can attend this fireside. They have to attend with a parent, but the church must have a lot of trust to let this organization talk to youth. So to me, that's very telling. It's not a distant relationship. It's a trusting relationship with the organization.
Absolutely. And again, here's another email, text message where people are asking, why are you pulling this without explanation? Why did you delete it? What is happening here? People are confused. You know, they make this claim that the church didn't put out a statement, and now here, you know, and people were all confused because of how the church put out the statement. And here Channel 4 just did basically the same thing, which just leads to confusion. But I think we immediately suspected what had happened. If the feedback to the viewer is correct, and he was told that the church thought it was biased and requested it, that's exactly what we thought must have happened, because there was no reason to take down that story based on the facts.
Well, and I also wonder, it seems like all the stuff that we perhaps in the post-Mormon podcasting world know about this story, other people and members don't know. You know, it's not in the Deseret News. So here's a news source that they would have access to. It's just regular news here in Utah. Maybe this is the first time some people are becoming aware of this story, and they are maybe contacting the news and saying, what is this? You know, so it's more public, I think, on ABC4 than it has been prior to this, I think, where it's just kind of been in the shadowy world of post-Mormon podcasting, right?
Yep. I agree with you. The sad part about this whole incident, though, is we've been podcasting for almost a year. We're just about to celebrate our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And we are seeing this over and over and over, where the media will not report anything that's detrimental to the church. Even when the church is the one who causes it. And I shouldn't say anything, but there are many things that the church does not want reported on. And the mainstream media seems to bend over backwards to help them. We've been covering the Heber Valley Temple issue. And one of the things we ran into when we went and talked to them was they said, we cannot get the word out of our concerns. We've been to the media, and they won't do any stories on us. This is one of our friends there that we talked to, and she said, KSL interviewed me twice and could not get permission to publish. We've not been able to get any national coverage. So
who are they getting permission from? That's what I would like to know, because it's a very interesting story. You know, it's a town. It's about, you know, the civic process. It's about changing ordinances. It's the kind of story that you see everywhere if it didn't involve a religious organization. So who do they need permission from? They've also had a problem where people will say, I'm coming out to interview you, and then cancel, eventually come back. You know, it's just been very difficult to get any kind of word out about, you know, this is a citizens group that is trying to relocate the temple to somewhere that's more appropriate. And so it's not covered from that point of view. I see coverage from the other point of view, the groundbreaking of the temple site, you know, coverage of that giant kind of party they had outside one of the city council meetings with lots of kids and ice cream. I see that kind of coverage. But as far as what the citizens group is trying to get across, they can't get it. Actually, that's probably why they came to us, right, Landon? They couldn't get anybody else, any other reputable news source to talk to us, so they came to Mormonish.
Yeah, and they told us
that must be it. They did tell us that. They did tell us that. But I have to say, after they came on our program, a few more, I think there was a radio interview they did. There were a few, you know, but it is a really interesting story, and they just can't get local news coverage. So and again, this very siloed, it's been small, a very siloed way of getting your news, you know, very insulated because you're not getting the full picture.
Exactly. And this just goes to show, and we're going to show several more examples where we've seen this happening, where the church controls the media in this state. And so Russell Brunson's comments that, you know, the real media who fact checks things and that anyone on social media can just, I mean, it's true. Anyone on social media can say what they want and put it out there. But the fact is that the accurate statements, the fact checking is happening by the small podcasts who are having to put this out after they go to work during the day to earn a living. While the reporters aren't covering any of this. Where's the coverage on Sean Reyes? Where's the, you know, we saw a couple questions asked to him at a press conference, and that's been it. Where is the media trying to find out how was Sean involved with this? what is going on here? This involves national politics, senators, church leaders, attorney generals. The governor was invited to this place and went. This is a big story, and there doesn't seem to be any concern or any investigation. And when someone does write a story, it's immediately pulled. What is going on?
Right. And a very tame story. I mean, everything you just detailed right there, that's big picture. And there's a lot there. Even though everything is an allegation, there's a lot. This story that we just covered, it's tame, it's small, it's just raising a few little questions, and yet even it was pulled. So yeah, and your point, Landon, that we've only been podcasting for a year, and we've had several stories and encounters where we've seen that the media doesn't pick up anything. We recently did an episode on the First Americans Museum. The church had given several years ago a $2 million donation to the museum to build a family history center within the museum, a family search family history center that would have the church's name on it, and people could go there to do family history and genealogy. Well, we kind of got a tip that was never built, and we looked into it. We did the whole episode on it, and it's true. It was never built, and the donation was given back. So there were so many articles about that donation being given. All over the place. In fact, still on Wikipedia, if you look up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Oklahoma, this is where the First Americans Museum is, you will see a statement at the end of the description of the church and its relationship there that says, we gave a $2 million donation. So this is kind of the reverse, right? In this case, it's not that they won't do a story, they won't retract a story. There's all kinds of positive PR still there about this $2 million donation, yet we have pretty much confirmed from multiple sources that that was given back. But that's not news, because that might be confusing and not a positive light about the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Another incident is the Bonnie Cordon. As we all remember, Bonnie Cordon has told several times the story about the death of her grandchild while they're in Florida on vacation at Disney World. And she's told it in, I think it was conference, and to several different young women groups or other groups. And she's been both Young Women's president and Relief Society president.
I think so, yeah.
General Relief Society president. And some astute listener decided to check out after they heard the story. They said, oh, I'm going to see what happened. And they went to look in the newspapers in Florida. And lo and behold, they find out that this was not just the death of a child, but it was deemed a murder by the after the autopsy, and that there'd been an investigation into this. Right. And charges were never pressed by anyone because they could never figure out who did it. But it was the incident occurred in the hotel room with the family, and Bonnie was absolutely there. But we heard nothing. We could find nothing in the newspapers about this. This is the death, which is ruled a murder.
A homicide. I think they said a homicide.
Homicide.
And there was no information in the Florida papers. The astute listener went and requested some records, and just kind of found out that that's what it had been ruled. So, but nothing here.
And her husband is a CEO of a large company. She's a general officer in the church. And this doesn't make any newspapers in Utah. So if the whole thing was hidden, I can understand that. But it came to light. RFM did a Mormonism Live did a whole series, 2 series on it. They requested the records under the Open Records Act.
And the videos.
They got the videos
of the interrogation
of her being interviewed by the police, of the whole family being interviewed. This is a huge story. Nowhere.
Nothing.
And I know people who had called the news station and asked, what's going on? Hey, why is nobody reporting this? And crickets.
And I had that experience. I was communicating via a chat somewhere with a reporter at the Tribune, a younger, I think lower level reporter, about something else. And just while we were being friendly back and forth, I said, hey, has anybody looked into this scenario that you just described? And I kind of outlined it a little bit. And she said, no, what? That is so interesting. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go check with someone, right? And I thought, oh, wow, maybe finally someone will just shed some light on this, because as you said, other people had sent in requests. They had given suggestions of looking into it. RFM and Bill Reel had done the 2 episodes, trying to shine some light on it. And so this reporter, she finally got back to me and she started talking to me about other things. She did not address, what I had suggested when her text before that had said, "Oh, wow, super interesting. I'm going to go find out right now. Stay tuned," is basically what it said. Then she just kind of ignored what I'd said, texted about a few other things. I brought it up one more time. I said, "Did you ever have a chance to check into this? We're actually just very curious." And then communication was cut off. So I feel like, she maybe not knowing at that level was like, "Oh, wow." But then from the top, you kind of learn, oh, we're not supposed to really look into this, and I think this happens a lot. I have an experience where I podcast on a more faithful podcast, and we had a guest on who was a reporter or a contributor to another newspaper, a more faithful newspaper. And we interviewed this person and we talked about church history and we talked about former prophets and things like that. And then I can't remember if we aired the podcast for just half a day or didn't air it at all. But this reporter contacted us and said, "My boss, my editor, has looked at this and we can't air it. I can't be saying these things. Can we please pull this or not air it and redo it?" And so the podcast said, "Okay, we'll accommodate that." But here's a person that in their personal life, they're a contributor reporter to a newspaper, couldn't have an opinion on something on another podcast. They had to run it past their editor who said no. I mean, it's just another example of very locked down, because that tells me that reporter also probably couldn't write a story about something that might raise a question, or have some other point of view. That's kind of how I read that situation.
And the reporter was not there representing
oh no, it was a personal podcast. Yeah, it was just, here's an interesting person. Let's interview this reporter. And we happened to start talking about, church history and some things, and they just shared opinions that were, just kind of nuanced. So yeah, it was very interesting. So
we're seeing over and over the media allowing the church to control the message that goes out and limiting the information that goes out, which to me is just heartbreaking, because now, I already had my shelf broke when I find out the church has not been telling me the truth and has been keeping the truth from me. And now I find out that our media is doing the same thing, that they will bend over backwards to play into the church, whatever the church wants them to do. So this is an article that came out that said that this is, again, something that the church put out to all the newspapers. This is the Salt Lake Tribune. The Salt Lake Tribune's covering it. This is a result of the lawsuit that came out that said that Elder Ballard has been taking records. It alleges that.
Mm-hmm. The amended claim that just came out. This is the church's response to that.
There was records that showed that he was doing this, and the church comes back and says, "No, that never happened. We never released any tithing records," the church states. Here's part of the article. It keeps going on. A senior apostle with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has never released tithing records to Operation Underground Railroad or any other organization, a church spokesman said Monday. So right off the bat, here's a bias. They're saying, no, it didn't happen. Someone else says it did. They say it didn't. So obviously that should spur this type of an investigation where you say, wait a minute, this guy says you did. You're saying you didn't. This guy says you did. What do we make of this? You guys need
this article is up. This article has been up for 2 weeks. So this has not been pulled, even though that's a statement that it's a he said, she said, or a he said, or a Ballard said right here.
And then it talks about it coming in as a denial that they didn't have evidence and nobody provided it. It says, so it goes on. There's a couple statements here. But then at the end, he's Doug Anderson, who is the same person who said, who gave the Vice information, is giving this information, which we just showed that that's all wrong. So how do we know that this isn't wrong too? Who's investigating this? Who's saying, wait, there's a bias. This might not be accurate, but it's the church's statement. So evidently, but the other statement was Russell Brunson's statement. You know, he made it on social media. All they're doing is referencing what he said. But in his statement, he says it regards tithing records as sacred and keeps them confidential. Well, whether he has a folder there that he's giving to Tim, or he's calling up people and saying, you need to give to this organization, and he knows who the big donors are in the church, this needs to be answered for. And that's all that the newspapers are trying to do. But the church won't answer. The church won't give an answer. They'll give all of this talk around, but they won't say how this conflict is happening. So,
right. Well, in order to fact check it, the fact check meter again, I think we can look at, and this was put in all the different news articles. What does the church, how does it treat tithing? And this is from the church website about tithing. And it says, confidentiality of tithing and other offerings. It says the amount of tithing and other offerings paid by a donor is confidential. Only the bishop and those who are authorized to handle or view these contributions should have access to this information. So that makes it sound like when you turn it in, the buck stops there, right? They know it. No one else should know it. Stake presidencies, bishoprics, and clerks should never inappropriately discuss a member's tithing status, nor should they discuss the total amount of tithing or other offerings received. So this is very clear. And I've also seen on social media, as this issue has been discussed, people who are ward clerks and serve another financial capacity in a ward have said, oh yeah, no, we were flat out told that our membership was in jeopardy if we broke that kind of confidentiality, talking about records or sharing records or anything like that. So I think they claim to take it extremely seriously, which is why I think they're coming out so seriously and saying, Elder Ballard would never do this. I mean, this would be, I would think, something that you could be disciplined for. Absolutely.
And this is from the church handbook, but it was also in that news article. So they quoted the church handbook in the article. So has the church used tithing donor information for other situations?
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know exactly if Elder Ballard did. I mean, there's some pretty good evidence, given that he's contacting all these high net worth donors, that something must have happened. But there are some other situations in church history where, yes, tithing records were used. Oh my goodness, the things you find out. So the legacy of Ernest L. Wilkinson. He was the president of BYU from the 50s to, I think, 1972. And even prior to that, church employees, there had been this idea that we need to make sure that they're tithe payers. We need to check their tithing. There was one point early on, I think it was in the 30s, 40s, where they wanted to actually take tithing out of your paycheck if you were a church employee, and people really pushed back on that. And I will say that even during all those eras, people within the church organization said, this doesn't seem quite right. There's confidentiality. So there was confusion there. But Ernest L. Wilkinson took it to another level. Like, he wanted to compare the tithing records from the church against the faculty salaries, because he was aware of the salaries. So he's going to look at your salary, and then he's going to look at what you pay in tithing. He knows what 10% of that he can do math. And if you are not paying a full tithe, no raises, and you literally could be disciplined or actually let go. So the meme I made, of course, AI, I'm all over it. Wilkinson is saying, unless you're a full tithe payer, you won't get raises and you could be let go. I'll be checking the tithing records. And of course, the poor BYU employee says, what the flippin' fetchin' fudge, which I'm pretty sure is what they would say. Hey, I used to be a Mormon. I used to talk like that. What the flippin' fetchin' fudge? Anyway, this is a big story. It's bigger than just what we're talking about here. And as I dug into this, I texted Landon. I'm like, we're doing an episode on this because this is just huge. But again, they did access the tithing records. They did see what people were making, and they did use them to influence what was happening to regular members in their daily life. So that's an example right there of where that happened. Although, as I said before, there was pushback from some people in the church, higher up, that said we can't be doing this. And eventually, of course, they stopped the practice. But for a time, it was perfectly legitimate to look at the tithing records and, discipline or fire or whatever. And I would say that kind of still goes on. It's just sort of changed. And that's in the form of the ecclesiastical endorsement, which has really been enforced in the last couple years and just really been locked down for employees and the staff. And of course, I was one of those. And I've told the story many times of going in for an ecclesiastical endorsement as an employee and telling my bishop when I was first married that I was not a full tithe payer because I worked for BYU, so I had no money. But, I told him thinking I would get support, empathy. No. He said that he would have to contact my boss and he couldn't give me an endorsement and that I might lose my job. So I don't see too much of a difference there. They're not accessing the tithing records, but they are moving it through the endorsement process, which still is your bishop who is aware of your financial situation, which impacts your endorsement. So it's the same kind of thing. Your tithe paying is used as leverage, discipline in a punitive way. It's not simply charitable giving. It's way more than that. But so we'll be doing an episode on that, won't we, Landon? He's like, what, another episode? I'm like, yes, we will.
And I think it's important to point out that evidently Wilkinson raised so much money that they were able to build the Wilkinson Center.
Every time I hear his name, I'm like, dang it, I love that Wilkinson Center when I was at BYU. The candy counter, the BYU bookstore, I loved it. So now another time where now this is alleged and anecdotal, would have most likely accessed tithing records is Prop 8. I have a story of a family member who was very well-to-do, and he was called to a very special fireside with only high net worth members. Not your average member is getting into this fireside in California in that era. These are very high net worth members, and they're all there, and they are told that they have got to donate to the Stop Prop 8 campaign, that they have to. And they did. A lot of them did. And of course, that came back to bite them because they're still on donor lists for that. And that is not a great look. But how did they know to gather this particular group of people? What do you think, Landon?
I don't see how they do it without either a bishop's recommendation, a stake president, or someone who has access to your tithing records telling them that. And we recently had a guest on our show who told us after our recording that he was approached by the church. Someone had indicated that he had a lot of money, that he was much more well off than he is. And they approached him and asked him for his house to make a donation of his.
But it's my house. I'm living here, and they're like, oh, you have plenty, which now, why would they think he was well-to-do? Because, a lot of people, they don't really show that, you know what I mean? The millionaire next door, you don't know. Some people live very simply, and only your tithing records are what's really going to reveal what your true income is. And so in this case, he's like, no, I'm not giving you my house. How did you get my name? But there's definitely, I think, that going on behind the scenes. You also wonder, and again, anecdotal, why does it seem that high net worth ward members end up in the callings, right?
Yeah.
The bishop, the stake president, they just do.
The mission president. Yeah.
The mission president, the second anointing, if I can say that. Again, you do reveal your most personal financial details to your bishop, and they're recorded and they're sent to Salt Lake. They're out there. And if those records were accessed in some way by President Ballard, either directly, indirectly, and personal information, contact information linked to net worth was used, that's a real breach right there. That's a real breach.
Absolutely. No, none of us signed up for that. And I think that could possibly be used in litigation for these people that are doing the suits to get the tithing money back. Is we weren't told this was going to be shared with people, and that other groups would be coming to get donations from us. Yep. As a result of that. So,
yeah. Wow. Well, where does that leave us?
Well, it leaves us in the Cayman Islands, because evidently that's where Elder Ballard must be spending a lot of his time. You did this on AI again.
I did. I just had this idea, kind of walking into the sunset. It would be Tim Ballard and Elder Ballard just kind of meeting after it's all over in the Cayman Islands. And of course, you made the joke, Landon, that by then at conference, they will have announced the temple to be built in the Cayman Islands, because maybe that's where most of the church holdings will be by then. I don't know. And maybe they just walk off into the sunset together. And of course, I'm being facetious. We absolutely don't know what's going to happen. Anything can come out next week. We don't know. This is far from over, but it certainly just raises a lot of questions. It shines a light on how things operate, how things are. In this episode, we tried to cover the media. Is it telling us what we need to know? Are we insulated? Are we isolated? Are we in a media silo? Are we being controlled as far as the information that we're given? And how do we get the actual information? I think those are all big questions that are raised by this scenario.
I would say the best thing about this whole thing from a church standpoint is that the media responding to the church like this should scare the hell out of every one of us. So if the church is going to do one good thing, it's scaring the hell out of everybody, because this ability of a church to control the media like this and make a request like that, and the media complies, that is scary. The media should never have caved in on this. There's not a single reason for the media to have pulled that story. And I think anyone would agree with that. I could be proven wrong. Show me what in that is wrong. But the media needs to explain why they would pull that story when it's clearly fact-checked, backed up by facts, and is accurate.
No, and I think that's the story now. Why was the story pulled is now bigger than anything else. And I think there's always this idea historically that the media is a safe place. Like, you want to get your story out, go to the media. Once it's in the media, everyone will know, and I'm protected. The media is going to treat us fairly. It's going to get the story out. There's safety there. And we're seeing here that that's not true. We've seen our Hebrew friends try to go to the media to get a story out, shut down here in Utah. We've seen all kinds of things like that. So I don't know, maybe some good will come out of this. Like you say, maybe it'll raise public awareness. I know we know lots of people that have contacted, ABC4 and said, what the heck? Where is that story? Why did this happen? We want to know. So then again, maybe we're siloed. Maybe we think everyone wants to know and it's just a small group of us, but I would hope there'd be more awareness.
Yeah, I agree. The media's job is to be a watchdog, and they're not doing it. They're not doing it. These small podcasts are what are doing it. We're the watchdogs now, because the others have relegated that to and aren't performing the duty that they're called to do.
Wow. So you're saying that we should change our tagline to living a joyful life as a watchdog? Is that what we have to do now? It doesn't sound very joyful. I don't know.
This isn't really a joyful story when you hear about it, but it's hard. It's hard to sit and watch that the people who are supposed to be watching the gate aren't watching the gate, Yep.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what we have for you tonight. A lot to think about. And like we say, I think there's going to be more coming out on this. And there have been some other wonderful podcasts done on the same topic. Like I said, RFM and John DeLynn, and I'm sure others will tackle it too. So, which is good. It's important. It raises awareness. And like Landon says, maybe it is the podcasters that are, speaking independently and trying to get the word out. So let us know in the comments. What do you think? Did you notice that this article was pulled? What are your thoughts? Do you think the church had some influence on that? Do you think perhaps it was Russell Brunson's organization that said you need to pull this? I kind of doubt that, because his video saying exactly what's in the article is still up on Facebook. So anyway, it's kind of a mystery. Tell us what you know. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And as always, like and subscribe to Mormonish. And if you would like to be notified when a new episode of Mormonish comes out, you can hit the notification bell. Also, you can help support Mormonish financially if you'd like. We have information on how to donate through PayPal and Venmo in our show notes. And we appreciate all of our viewers, and we really value your opinions. We value when you reach out to us and, just talk to us, because you also have a lot of good information, and we really appreciate who all of you are. So that's it from Mormonish for tonight. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.